Well, hello everyone. Here to show you right here. I talk about for Happy Juneteenth right here, and what does Juneteenth basically mean? It's another source of federal holiday introduced just basically like for like any source of tradition based on if it's slavery or just by your freedom though, and a lot of times that it's like any teachers that might even say too that it's just another way of stating as to where they talk about if it's a freedom, and then also about another way of how you want to look at it is just to where can you really look at it just a little bit maybe like a sort of like Bill of Rights, and also a mascot or something like that. But still, that whenever we think about Juneteenth though, that that's just it's another way of stating to where that celebrating about whenever the slaves were freed, like during the time, that if it's anything that is really based on history, though, that knowing about back around the year of 1865, and that's to me that sounds a little bit like during the time whenever Abraham Lincoln was president, and I was reading up the details about that, and yeah, that so it's like if you're going to be looking up looking up the information about that, and knowing about anything about for what the president that they're going to go ahead and sign that like toward it sign a bill into law to where that they're going to go ahead and make that a federal holiday, right? But it sure seems that way that if it's something that has happened, something from a long time ago, and at the time you weren't 02, that why did it take nearly over 100 years just for that to be signed into law, and at the time you weren't 02, that if it's really just about for whoever that's going to be president, that they're going to go ahead and say that trying to get the Democrats and Republicans really to come together just to be able to make their decisions about what they're going to do at all. But at the time I want to know too that is that maybe going to be marked on the calendar for next year, to where that not only for Memorial Day, but then also there's going to be what you call this holiday, just to represent, from whenever the slaves were freed, and also, if it's freedom rights or anything like that. And so it's like, that talk about for typical graphic design right here that you see right here that I put together. This right here would be like, kind of like, if anybody has really look closely at like any of the coins, any of the scrolls or the coins or anything like that, anything in the fine print, and you would maybe see something like a logo that would represent, for something like, in the background it would be like a backdrop or something like that that would represent for, a certain state, and then for what was going on, like, maybe if it was the wars or something like that that were going on during a time. And that's why it sure seems that way that the idea I came up with right here is talking about the ink, the way that a lot of these designs are printed, and if we were to be using this what you call this I don't know the type of name that most designers will give it, to where you can actually see the print right there, but then you're able to see through the image right there. So let's just say that if something like this were to be used for a lot of the designs, right, but then you're going to have the year kind of like going like in diagonal or something like that, and so you have right here for USA right here, and you have right here I talk about for America, the safety and respect to the Americans, measure. And so that for Juneteenth, for Hope Wins, and then you have right here for 2020 right here, and then for 2021, but then for 2022 right here, for We Are All Americans, United States right here. So this right here was supposed to be any sort of social studies assignment or something like that, and it sure seems that way, that there's a bunch of information kind of all squeezed together and kind of just thrown on one page, and that's a little bit one of the reasons why it seems like it's real confusing for anybody really to understand what exactly does this mean. What are we looking at right here? So whenever I working on this design right here, that I can tell everybody that whenever you go and work on a design, that you're just yeah, you're forming like a creative mind to where what exactly that comes to your mind, but then you know just to explain to everybody that you actually decide to go, I'm like, yeah, just use that same exact design, but then just change the subject around just a little bit to where that you were really using this right here for the elections, and then by the time I'm like, yeah, and then people were more likely going to ask you to go ahead and use it as like a mascot to represent for a war that was going on, or maybe about the Democrats or Republicans, and then it could also be related to talking about for the holiday of Juneteenth right here. And so it sure seems that way that if I remember, if we all remember the slaves, like I'm trying to remember about Frederick Douglass and a few other slaves that you hear about the stories about that, and I think from the ones that escaped the slavery, and then talk about seems like the holiday really talks about the slaves during the time, but it sure seems that way if you're gonna be understanding the stories toward it really, back in 1865, come on, that was before commercial radio was even around, wasn't it? So I'm like, we want to know too that if there's going to be a bill that's going to pass into law, that you want to know too that why is it that maybe that it's going to take place, and then find out that anything such as test scores or anything like that are going to have to be postponed until the following Monday or something like that. And I really don't know if governors or the president or principals, if they really realize that. But anything important that needs to be done that next business day, that if a bill is signed into law, and it sounds like to me just a little bit like the process was either delayed or for anything else, but still I'm just showing everybody here that the work talk about for Hope Wins right here, talk about the free the slaves right here. But if we can all see this right here, that talk about for United States of America right here, so it sure seems that way. It starts out with an American flag right here, but then talk about the citizens of the United States right here. So at this right here was printed on like an actual flag right here, to where most viewers were able to see this right here, but it seems like that there's just too much distraction going on with like what's going on in the background right there, and what's this all about, or what's that all about. So if people were to be looking at this design right here, and they're gonna maybe be wondering toward it, it's really confusing and really hard to understand what we're looking at right here, because really that if I actually the thing that I want to something I want to mention to everybody here is actually talking about like the fine print, to where if you can actually write the year of, like if you were to actually print out a sign and make the print even bigger, to where you can have the year right there, but the year is going to be in bigger print, to where you can actually see the action going on in the background right there. So a lot of times that most designers find that to be more common, to where if you can work that out to where it will be like the type of visible ink, to where you can go in and have something like the year or something to represent the team in big print right there, and then have something in the background that represents for our men in men in color, your men and women in uniform or something like that, and has something like that in the background. And so it sure seems that way that that whenever you think about a design, though, that it sure seems that way, that you had no clue what you want to work out until you actually maybe just throw a few things, and generate any sorts of draft, though, and like anything that you would really want to use, though. But still, that the things that you want to use and the things that you do not want to use. But this right here is actually going to kind of remind me just a little bit of like looking at some of those coins. If we're talking about history, though, that why is it that whenever you look at the back of some of these coins, and some of these coins that would represent, for like, some of these coins, and maybe anything in history besides, if it's going to be the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence or something like that. And you'll likely want to know too that why is it that whenever you look at history like that, then like you say it's toward well, really, that you try to explain a lot of the story just by is toward that most graphic designers would say is toward you go ahead and draw a picture, right? But then have like something going across the page that talks about, who was there at the meeting, and then what bill was signed into law, and anything else that represents, for what this holiday means right there, and talk about that for USA right there. And so I have right here for 1865 right here, and so it's like that when we think about that though, and at the time, I'm likely want to know too that really, why does it take, over 100 years, just for a federal holiday, to be, I'm like, but still, that on the other hand, that it sure seems that way, that knowing about for who that's going to be president, that if it's really about trying to get the Democrats and Republicans to really understand, to honor our history, and I think that that's really the situation. I'm like, just to honor our men and women, who were, survivors of the slaves, and I'm like anything about our history though, and so a lot of times it sure seems that way that whenever it comes to understanding about typical social studies in American history, that I could thinking too that something that happened that nearly, I'm like, from the slaves, and then the wars that were going on, and you're likely thinking is toward it is something that happened, nearly over 100 years ago, and you're likely want to know too that why is it that that it takes that long just for a bill to pass into law, to where that you go ahead and pass a bill, and want to know is to where anything such as class assignments or anything else that you were going to be working on at that Monday, that it would have to be postponed until that Monday. But from that Friday, it'd be postponed until Monday. But anyway, I thought I'd go ahead and talk to everybody here about that, because it sure seems that way that when we think about these holidays, though, that you're likely thinking is that, you go ahead and celebrate these holidays, but at the same time, though, it's like you likely want to know too is that the situation like gives you the whole day off, to where you can go out and enjoy your time, go to the movies or something like that, or if anything, that if you just want to look at that like a relaxing day or something like that. But still, but talk about our history though, that it sure seems that way that if you were to go ahead and put together like a poster size, of this right here, and like most designers would say that if you're going to be doing any sorts of a Photoshop or After Effects work with this right here, that what I've been working with is actually the year right here. And you see right here is the year right here, that if you were to change the color of that wording of the year, that you would still be able to see the picture in the background, right? But it would just be the number 2 right there, just kind of going around at the eyebrows and in the nose and in the mouth right there. And like anybody would say is toward it, that's really hard to understand. We're trying to follow up with what you're talking about here. I'm like, what exactly is that supposed to say right there? And anybody says to where if that's supposed to be, maybe a Super Savers, I mean, if that right there is supposed to be, a gift card. If you're trying to send a gift card to somebody just to represent for, JuneTeenth, holiday, and you want to know too that, if you were to use a design like this, and you're likely thinking too that, really that, would that be used for that reason, or just to represent to, or that, this right there, it's supposed to mark the year. And I would really highly recommend it, mainly because, so that way, you can tell people that by next year, just to be just be ready to sign up, for that event, that for what goes on for the next year. And I would really recommend it for that reason. But if anybody says to her, if you're going to be designing any sorts of illustration, poster, that it really just kind of gets in the way whenever you do that. So if you were to do like any sorts of Photoshop work right there and put any big letters right there in front of the picture, and you're probably like want to know too that why is it that you would do that? Why is it that you would maybe use text wrapping for some of your designs? And I would say, if anything, I would really you recommend it if you have graphics. If you have graphics and other images that you're trying to place onto one or more documents, and that's usually how designers would usually describe that. To where if you're going to be creating a masterpiece of some sort, that you want to know too that why would you want to place all these graphics and headings and warnings on one document? Why can't you just divide it into separate documents to where it will be easier to understand? But at the same time, that it's really that for anything that really becomes interesting to anybody who really wants to read further about it and just to be able to better understand the holiday, like I say too, that well, whenever a bill comes into law, though, we're talking about just one sheet of paper, right? We're not talking about nearly over 100 pieces of paper here that you have to read about or whichever. But still that I know with me, though, that like anybody say too, that whenever you do look at a bill a lot of times, or any sorts of agreement or some sort, that you might see something like more than 30 pieces of paper right there, like a whole booklet of paper talking about the details about what is it about what went on during a point in time, and anything about our history. But it sure seems that way that whenever we think about whenever we do think about the year 2021 and 2022 right here, that a lot of designers would maybe wonder why would you want to put the year in big letters right there in front of the picture like that? And people always say is well, if it's supposed to be just something to, if anything, it's going to be maybe taken effective, a new bill that's going to come into law or something like that, something for the next year. So it's like anybody says just to be prepared for the next year, and then also anybody that might even think too is that you would do that just so that way you can tell people that besides the exclamation point or something like that, that we're also talking about is that back in 1865, that was before a lot of the automobiles were even around, and manufacturing jobs, and then any jobs like that, and you want to know too what about the cotton factory, but at the time you're probably thinking is during that time that you weren't were that anything that was printed on stone, or maybe I'm like the scrolls, if it's the scrolls or something like that, or anything in fine print, but still that but the way I think about it too, though, that looking at this right here, but you see right here, for very brave young Americans right here. So so I have right here, I talk about for Juneteenth right here, and it sure seems that way, that looking at this right here, talking about for the United States of America right here, United States, but it sure seems that way, that when we think about design, though, that the first thing that you really start out with, of course, is the American flag. You kept that picture right there into the background right there. But like anybody who's going to be trying to read further into the story about really what's this all about right here, and let's just say that if you were to actually blend in more of the colors and add any other sorts of special effects, and at the time you probably think as to that's really the whole purpose about graphic design, ain't it? Whenever you put all those details onto one document just to show it, like if this right here is supposed to be, all in one, poster right here. But still, that if there's just too much distraction going on right there in the background, and maybe not everybody's really going to be able to follow up about that. So it sure seems that way, that you go ahead and think as to where the, yeah, well, the main topic will be, is I say, yeah, for Juneteenth will be the holiday right there. But it sure seems that way, that anything that was delayed or rescheduled, or anything like that, and so it sure seems that way, that you know right here will be is the year right here. And like anybody says, to where if you're gonna, any designers might even say that that right there looks like that the year was erased. If it was updated, if the document was updated, that let's just say the year in the background right there somehow had been erased, and that you had to update it for the next year. And so it sure seems that way, that a lot of designers that might find certain common, I don't know if you want to call them errors or mistakes or anything like that, but a lot of designers would maybe say is to where that you were going to use that design earlier, but then that whenever things get delayed, or if you decide to just not use it right away, or anything else that comes up. But it sure seems that way, that that whenever you think about design like this, that a lot of things that really come to my mind. But really, that one thing I did want to talk about right here was the year right here. So anybody that might say is to where the, yeah, well, if you were to actually print the year right there in big letters like that, what would the reason be for that? And let's just say if we're talking about, maybe if we're talking about the elections or something like that, why would anybody, want to do that? And it sure seems that way, that designers would say is to where that if you're going to be looking at any sort of illustration or any sort of design like that, that first of all, if you can actually see clearly, I'm like this right here, that, yeah, add any source of effect right there. I'm like, yeah, the typographical, type effect right there, to where you can actually see through that fine print right there. It's like kind of like if you want to kind of look at it like a little glass or something like that. If you actually added any sorts of graphics, like if you were to mount that on a window and people can actually see through the ink right there. And I want to know too is that you go ahead and place the year right there. And I thought that I'd go ahead and talk about that, just because that this right here was supposed to be like a backdrop or something like that. Yeah, a background, and then you go ahead and put a year right there, and then put USA right there. But let's just say that if you were to put any, really any state right there or something like that, and it's like, really, that they're trying to get everybody to really understand a lot of that. And so that's why it sure seems that way, that just to really better understand, though, it's like, yeah, if that's one of the reasons why that you just really had that in the background right there. So that way, for whoever that notices that, or if anything, that they're going to go ahead and say that, okay, whatever that means right there. But talk about for the slaves, though. And so I know most of the history that I know, that it sure seems that way, toward it, that during the time of the slavery. So is that basically means is toward it, that the slaves that were freed. The slaves that were free, and sound like, the slaves that were free. But I know, I'm trying to think here if it was after, what, the Civil War, or one of those wars during Lincoln's during the time that Abraham Lincoln was president. But anyway, so yeah, that's the type of stuff that talk about right there. But anyway, but you have right here of USA right here, but you're talking about right here is toward that whenever it comes to designs, though, that you have right here is the American flag right here in the background, and you have the year right there. And like I say too, that if you're going to go ahead and do a design like that, but didn't have have it toward it, have like any source of writing or, so far saying, and let's just say if it's supposed to be maybe a quote, if somebody were to quote something like, to word it, this is a, the speech, to word it, somebody gave a speech about something to why it was signed into order, why it was signed into law, and if you were to give a speech about something, then maybe you would put like that, in print, like across the page right there, where you can actually see it and read it, but then at the same time, you can actually see what's going on in the background right there, and so do most publishers find that really interesting whenever it comes to understanding about the tools and all that the graphic designers would have access to? And you're probably thinking too that really that it's really hard to recognize what's going on in that picture. So that's maybe one of the reasons why that it would be recommended really to put that on separate documents, so that way you can explain more about what you're talking about. And but anyway, but I thought I'd go and show everybody here that right there. I talk about the Juneteenth holiday, talk about hope wins right here, and we are all Americans right here. But you're talking about for the very brave young Americans. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day.